guys, I'm here to discuss to you the module 13, which is WLAN configuration. Should I take this module? Welcome to WLAN configuration. Some of us remember getting on the internet using dial-up. Dial-up involved using your landline phone. Your landline phone was unable to make receive calls while you were on the internet. Your dial-up connection to the internet was very slow. It basically meant that for most people, your computer was always in one place in your home or school. Then we were able to connect to the internet without using our landlines, but our computers were still hardwired to the devices that connected them to the internet. Today we can connect to the internet using wireless devices that lets us take our phones, laptops, and tablets almost anywhere. It's nice to have this freedom of moving, but it requires special and intermediary devices and a good understanding of wireless protocols. Want to know more? Then this is the module for you. What will I learn to do this module? Remote site WLAN configuration. Configure a WLAN to support remote site. Configure basic WLAN on the WLC. Configure a WLC WLAN to use the management interface and WPA2 PSK authentication. Configure WPA2 Enterprise WLAN on the WLC. Configure a WLC WLAN to use a LAN interface, DHCP server, and WPA2 Enterprise authentication. Troubleshoot WLAN issue. Troubleshoot common wireless configuration issue. Remote site WLAN configuration.
Hello everyone, it's time to get our computer hooked up to a network. In this video we're going to do a wired and wireless configuration using our Cisco wireless router. To start, we will connect our computer's Ethernet port using a network cable to one of our LAN ports on the back. I take my computer's Ethernet cable and plug it into one of our LAN ports. Next, we want to get this wireless router connected to the internet. So I'll take my internet cable from my modem and plug that into my WAN port on the back. At this time, I can go to my computer's web browser and I can type in the IP address of my Cisco wireless router. If you do not know the default IP address of your wireless,
The wireless router. Remote workers, small branches offices, and home network often use a small office and home router. These routers are sometimes called an integrated routers because they typically include a switch for wired clients, a port for an internet connection, and wireless components for wireless client access as shown for the Cisco Meraki in the figure for the rest of time. Module Small Office. Cisco Meraki MX64W. Plug in the wireless router. Most wireless routers are ready for service out of the box. They are configured to be connected to the network and provide services. For example, the wireless router uses DHCP to automatically username and password can easily be found on the internet. Just enter the search phrase default wireless router IP address or default wireless router password to see a listing of many websites that provides this information. For example, username and password for the wireless router in the figure is admin. Therefore, your first priority should be to change these defaults for security reasons. To gain access to the wireless router's configuration GUI, open a web browser. In the address field, enter the default IP address for your wireless router. The default IP address can be found in the documentation that came with the wireless router, or you can search the internet. Basic network setup. Basic network setup includes the following steps. Log into the router from a web browser. Change the default administrative password. Log in with the new administrative password. Change the default DHCP IPv4 addresses. Renew the IP addresses. Log into the router with the new IP addresses. Log into the router from a web browser. After logging in, a GUI opens. The GUI will have tabs or menus to help you navigate to various routers configuration tasks. Change the default administrative password. To change the default login password, find the administration portion of the router's GUI. In this example, administration tab was selected. And next is log in with the new administrative password. After you save the new password, the wireless router requests authorization again. Enter the username and new password as shown in the example. Click this tab. And change the default DHCP IPv4 addresses. Change the default router IPv4 addresses. It is the best practice to use private IPv4 addresses include your network. The IPv4 addresses 10.10.10.1 is used in the example, but it could be any private IPv4 addresses chosen. Renew the IP address. When you click save, you will temporarily lose access to the wireless router. Open a command window and renew your IP address with the ipconfig renew command as shown in the example. And next is log into the router with the new IP addresses. Enter the router's new IP addresses. Regain access to the router configuration GUI shown in the example. You are now ready to continue configuration the router for wireless access. Basic wireless setup. Basic wireless setup included the following steps. Number 1, view the WLAN default. Number 2, change the network mode. Number 3, configure the SSID. Number 4, configure the channel. Number 5, configure the security mode. And number 6, configure the passphrase. View the WLAN defaults. Out of the box, a wireless router provides wireless access to device using a default wireless network name and password. Change the network mode. Some wireless routers allow you to select which 802.11 standards to implement. Configure the SSID. Assign an SSID to the WLAN's office nets. Is used in the example for all 3 WLANs. The wireless router announces its presence by sending broadcasts inserting its SSID. This allows wireless hosts to automatically discover the name of the wireless network. If the SSID broadcast is disabled, you must manually enter the SSID on each wireless device that connects to WLAN. Configure the channel. Devices configured with the same channel within the 2.4 GHz band may overlap and cause distortion, slowing down the wireless performance and potentially break new network connection. Configure the security mode. Out of the box, a wireless router may have a WLAN security configured. In the example, the personal version of Wi-Fi Protect Access version 2. And configure the passphrase. WPA2 Personal uses a passphrase to authenticate wireless client. WPA2 Personal is easier to use in a small office or home environment because it does not require authentication service. Large organization implement WPA2 enterprise and requires wireless clients to authenticate with a username and password. Configure a wireless mesh network. In a small office or home networks, one wireless router may suffice to provide wireless access to all the clients. However, if you want to extend the range beyond approximately 45 meters indoors and 90 meters outdoors, you can add wireless access points as shown in the wireless mesh network in the figure. NAT for IPv4. On wireless router, if you look for a page like the status page shown in the figure, you will find the IPv4 addresses information that the router uses to send the data to the internet. Quality of service. Many wireless routers have an opinion for configure quality of service. By configure QoS, you can guarantee that certain traffic types, such as voice and video, are prioritized over traffic that is not as time sensitive, such as email and web browsing. The figure is simplified mock-up of a QoS interface based on negotiation. Port forwarding. Wireless router typically block TCP and UDP ports that prevent unauthorized access in and out of a LAN. However, there are situations when specific port must be opened so that certain programs and applications can communicate with devices on different networks. Port forwarding is a rule-based method of directing traffic between devices on separate networks. When traffic reaches the router determines if the traffic should be forwarded to a certain device based on the port number found with the traffic. Packet tracer configure a wireless network. Configure a wireless network. In this lab, you will configure basic settings on a wireless router and connect a PC to a router wireless. Configure a basic WLAN on the WLC. SNMP and radius. In the figure, PCA is running simple network management protocols and remote authentication dial-in user service server software. SNMP is used to monitor the network. The network administration wants the WLC to forward all and SNMP log messages called traps to the SNMP server. Configure SNMP server information. Configure radio service server information.
Hello everyone, we are here to deploy a virtual interface on our wireless LAN controller. But why are we doing it? Well, what it comes down to is every single wireless local area network that we deploy using our wireless LAN controller, those wireless local area networks need their own virtual interface. A virtual interface
Each WLAN configured on the WLC needs its own virtual interfaces. Topology. Configure a new interfaces. And that's all, guys. Thank you.